Well, hello and good evening. Welcome to another Tom Talk Live. It's a Friday night, and this is when I'm doing my Tom Talk Lives for a little while. So we're going to try this out, see how this time slot works. Hope you guys are doing well. You made it through the week. It's Friday. Have a nice weekend that we're looking forward to. And then, of course, got 4th of July coming up next weekend. So I'm excited about that. We're planning to go to a friend's house that are shooting off some fireworks. So I'm excited about that. But I hope you guys are doing well this evening. And for those of you that are joining me live, feel free to uh, chat with me in the comments there. Let me know who you are, where you're from, and all that good stuff. But I have a really good topic, I think, for today that I want to cover, and it's one that I've been thinking a lot about here in the last week or so, and realizing it's an area that I've been doing a lot of work on myself. So this is an area of my life that I've really seen the benefits of working on this and really seen the difference that it makes. And so I titled this one "How to Stop Being Disappointed." Right. So that's the topic for this evening: how to stop being disappointed. Um, and so there's a secret to this that we're going to get into in just a second. But disappointment is one of those pervasive things. I think it's easy to be disappointed, right? And it happens in so many different ways. And it's for the most part, it's a part of life, right? There's going to be disappointments. There's going to be things that we want to happen certain ways, things that we're hoping for, things that we're pursuing in our lives, and we get disappointed because it doesn't turn out how we hoped it would, right? And so for me, this happened really recently, actually. So if you were watching I did a live stream last night just on Facebook, and I was talking about how we just got back from a trip to Louisville. So Kim and James and even Lucy came along. We all packed up and went to stay at an Airbnb in Louisville, Kentucky. First time we've been there, and we were probably about a couple days in. It was like a 4-day trip, not super long, but we were about halfway through the trip, and I was just starting to feel really down and disappointed. And I was just like thinking, we haven't really done that much. And I was comparing it to other trips we've been on. We went to St. Louis one time a couple years ago, and comparing it to, like, we did all this different stuff then, and we're not doing that much now, and just really feeling disappointed. And I kind of had to stop, and Kim helped me out with this too, and helped me kind of shift my mindset a little bit so that I could enjoy the trip that we were on currently, right? And so that really helped. But yeah, disappointment's just one of those things that shows up. And so how do we deal with that? How do we work on not being disappointed as much, right? So I want to share with you the key to that. And the key to that is basically understanding that it's our own expectations that are what creates disappointment, right? So it's not the people, it's not the circumstances. A lot of times we blame it on the person, right? That this individual didn't come through for me. They didn't do what I was expecting them to do, right? It's the expectation, right? They didn't do what I expected them to do. Or maybe it was a circumstance, a situation didn't go as I expected it would, and therefore I'm disappointed, right? So it's not really the thing that happened, it's just a thing that happened, right? But my emotional response to that is based on my expectation of how it was going to go, right? So it's really all about letting go and releasing those expectations, right? So I want us to think about that for our second. Our own expectations disappoint us, right? It's not the person, it's not the circumstance, it's our own expectations that disappoint us. So I want you to just kind of think about that in maybe a recent time in your own life that you were disappointed, right? Think of the last time that you just were really disappointed, right? Not just like a small, like, disappointment, but something that really got you down, something that really affected you. And think about, what was my expectation of that situation, right? How did I expect it to go? And if I hadn't had that expectation, maybe my expectations were too high. Maybe I was being unreasonable in what I wanted, but maybe I wasn't. Maybe I was being reasonable. But it still connects back to what our expectation is of that specific circumstance, right? And that definitely happens for me, right? So going back to my example of this trip to Louisville, like I had high expectations for it. I was comparing it to other trips and stuff, fun stuff we had done on other trips, and we hadn't done that yet on this trip. And I was just like, man, it just feels like we're sitting around. We're not really doing that much. We've only gone to a couple places, and it hasn't been this like exciting, thrilling trip, that I was expecting. And so it took me a minute to just kind of reframe that. And we're going to talk about how to do that here in just a second, how to reframe our expectations and what we need to be focused on and thinking about instead of those expectations. So first we need to understand a little bit more about our our expectations, right? Where does this come from? It's ultimately the idea is it's not things aren't going how they're supposed to be, right? It's not how it's supposed to be. We have in our mind it's supposed to be this way, and it's not, right? They were supposed to do this thing. They were supposed to write back to me. They were supposed to help me out with this, and they didn't. And because it didn't go how it was supposed to be, right? How I expected it to be, now I'm upset. Now I'm disappointed. Now I'm frustrated. And it can even lead to resentment, right? If we let it, it can really be something that can be a very powerful negative presence in our lives. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this. That's why I think this is an important topic to discuss because if we aren't more conscious of this, and willing to do a little bit of analysis when we're feeling this way, it can really, ruin our day. It can ruin our week. It can ruin our lives if we let it, right? It can create just a string of scenarios and situations that we find ourselves in constantly where we're being disappointed, right? Where we're just not happy with the circumstances of our lives. And it could have ruined that trip for me, right? Paid a lot of money to go to Louisville and, stay at this place and go to the different places and eat out and all these things, right? I could have ruined the trip and just been disappointed the whole time and grumpy the whole time. But thankfully, Kim helped me snap out of it and realize, hey, there's good stuff going on, right? Let's focus on that. Um, and so, where does some of these expectations come from? Do you think? Um, let's talk about that for a minute because I think these expectations come from different places. Oh, we got um, a Druckside TV here with us. I think I know who this is. Welcome. Thank you for interacting. Yeah. So you said I feel like jumping to conclusions could be discussed alongside this topic. Yes, certainly, certainly. So assumptions, right? So sometimes we have certain assumptions, or we conclude that it's gonna go this way, and it doesn't. And so that's a good point to make, right? So there are times where expectations are fair, right? I'm looking ahead to see if I'm supposed to talk about this yet. Yeah, I think we can talk about it now. I got it all outlined and organized. So expectations are okay sometimes, right? So when you have an agreement um, with someone or a certain setup, certain scenario where it's like, okay, it is supposed to be this way, right? So I'm supposed to pay you, and you're supposed to bring out my food, and it's supposed to be the thing that I ordered, and it's supposed to be, have all the things that it said it had on the menu. So these are agreements, and so we have a reasonable expectation that we're going to receive what we are paying for, right? We're giving them money, and they're giving us food, and so there's kind of an expectation there, right? And that's okay. And so if it takes forever to come out, or if it's not the food we ordered, or if it's doesn't have what they said it was supposed to have, those kind of things, obviously there's disappointments there, and that's understandable to have those expectations. But sometimes we even have expectations that like aren't ever even spoken, right? There's never an agreement. There was never something that we even put out there. It's just in our own mind. We build up this idea of this is how it's supposed to be, right? And then we get disappointed when it doesn't turn out that way. Again, so going back to where these expectations come from, this can come from a variety of different ways. Like some of it's social um, norms that we kind of get certain expectations based on the culture and society that we live in. Maybe it's how we were raised. In our own families, there were certain ways things were done, and so we kind of have these expectations built up. And then sometimes it's just something that we create ourselves, right? We just kind of have our own, set of expectations and ways that we feel like things should be done, right? And so first we need to kind of understand where that's coming from. And then that can help us to pivot into what we can do about that, right? And so when we think about the negative side of having expectations, right? That's kind of what I want to focus on next. How does it hurt us? Um, and it hurts us because I think it can lead to very negative emotions. Not all the time, right? If we know how to manage it, and that's what this whole video is about, learning how to manage our expectations, learning how to kind of loosen our grip on them a bit. So I'm not coming to this with the advice of, oh, don't ever have any expectations about anything, right? But rather, um, be less attached to them, right? Don't be as attached. Don't be holding on as tightly to these expectations because it leads to negative things, right? It can lead to resentment and disappointment. We get in our minds that we can control situations. I think it's attached to this idea of control, and that's a thing for me, right? That's definitely an issue for me. I like to be in control. I like to plan things out and know things are going to be a certain way, and then do what I can to orchestrate things a certain way, and then I have expectations that it's going to have a certain result, a certain outcome. And when it doesn't, guess what? I get upset, right? I'm not happy about it. I'm disappointed, and if it's a bigger thing, and if it's something I'm really invested in, that can lead to very big negative feelings. And then if I let it, it can even lead to resentment. Druxide says societal norms are essentially mutually agreed upon expectations. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it is, right? And it's understandable to have that. That's the way society works, right? We do have these unspoken rules that allow us to kind of interact with each other, right? You figure like it would be very strange to have them all written out. Um, but that's why, like, if you have someone from another country visiting, right, or if you ever go to another country, right, go to a different culture, a place where they do things very differently and think about things differently, there's going to be unspoken agreements there that you're not aware of, and you're going to be like, why are they doing this, or why aren't they, I had a friend that moved to Poland, and I remember him talking about how um, he was used to smiling at people. If you're just walking down the street, it might be a stranger, but you just smile to someone. It's just kind of a thing to do to be nice, and courteous and polite. And they would just give him weird looks, like, why are you smiling at me? We don't know each other. We're not friends. Like it wasn't part of their social norms, right? It wasn't part of their culture to do that. So you're absolutely right, right? It's a lot of it comes from these mutually agreed upon expectations. So, what happens when people break those rules, right? When they don't go along with what we expect? And the thing is, we probably don't do things that other people expect of us, right? But we usually have ways of justifying it for ourselves. So, what do we do about this, right? This can be a real issue when we are holding on to our expectations so tightly that it's really hurting us, right? And so, what can we do about that? What do we need to do in order to release that? So that's what I kind of want to get into, and that's really the important part of this, right? So if you're still with me, I want you to tune in for this part. This is the important part. So as we talk about expectations, I do think it's important to differentiate that from having standards, right? Having boundaries, and then also just having hope for things, right? We can hope for things. We can have desires for wanting things to go a certain way. So it's okay to have that, right? So I want to make sure that as we talk about this, understanding that hope and standards are not expectations, right? So the difference here is, having hope is like a kind of a healthy, open-hearted desire for something, right? Like I really hope that this thing happens. That would be great. An expectation is if it doesn't happen, then I'm going to be upset. If it doesn't happen, then that means this person doesn't care about me because they didn't do the thing that I expected them to do, right? And then boundaries, right? Those are important too. Having standards, those are basically there to protect us, right? So that doesn't mean that we should always accept any kind of behavior, any way of people treating us that we don't approve of and we don't like and isn't healthy for us. So if we were to give an example of this, right? So Hope says, I'd love for my friends to call me on my birthday, right? Um, that's a hope, right? It's a open-hearted desire. The expectation says if they don't, then that must mean they don't care about me, right? The expectation that comes along with that negative emotion is that like, oh, if they didn't do the thing that I expected them to do, then it must mean that they don't care about me. We kind of create this story, this narrative, and I can definitely be guilty of this where I allow, especially if there's a string of these kind of things, I see a pattern in certain things not meeting my expectations that are kind of in the same category. I start to create this narrative like, well, then it must mean that just, I'm not worth getting back to, right? Or something like that. And so the standard, right? So if that's the hope and the expectation, and then the standard would be, well, if there's someone who consistently never gets back to me, consistently ignores me, or consistently forgets important moments in my life, then maybe I need to reevaluate that relationship, and maybe we're not as close as I thought we were, right? So having standards is okay, but the expectation is kind of in that moment. Am I getting more upset than I should be? Really, it's okay to be let down, right? And I get that's what disappointment is, but we're talking about where you really let it get to you, right? Where you let it turn into a deeper negative emotion that you're not letting go of. And I think that can be the key to so many things, right? So I never want you to think that I'm telling you you can't feel negatively, right? We all have the right to feel what we feel. So allow yourself to feel it, right? It's okay to feel disappointed if you were really hoping that they would have strawberry ice cream and they didn't, right? um, to be a little let down, but it's when we hold on to those negative emotions, we hold on to those disappointments, and we hold on to um, the resentment that it can turn into, that it becomes unhealthy, right? So again, hope and standards not the same thing as what we're talking about here with expectations. And Madrox, I thank you for your participation here. I would argue that standards become expectations when expressed in a healthy relationship. Standards become expectations when expressed in a healthy relationship. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. And I would agree with that. When you have agreed upon standards, right? In a relationship where you're like, hey, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that, where we've talked about it, we've acknowledged it, we've agreed to it. And then, then that expectation, it's okay to have that expectation. And that would be, yeah, something that's mutually agreed upon. But even then, like if it doesn't happen, then, you have another discussion, right? You bring it back up instead of just feeling that negative frustration and disappointment and anger and resentment and all those things, right? And holding on to it. There needs to be healthier ways to express our disappointment because we're all human, right? We all make mistakes. So even in the bonds of a healthy relationship where you do have expectations outlined, you're going to let each other down, right? You're going to break those from time to time. It's just how we are. So being able to deal with that in a healthy way, I think, is important, and that's kind of uh, really what I'm trying to get to here. So let's talk more about what do we need to do in order to handle disappointment better, right? To handle expectations so that we're not as disappointed, what do we need to do about that? Well, my lovely wife is chiming in. She says expectations put unneeded pressure on people and situations. Right. Yeah. And this can definitely be a problem, right? Where, and I do this from time to time. She's probably got some stories she could tell, I imagine, where I do this. I do put pressure on situations where I'm just like really banking on something happening a certain way and build it up. And even what's crazy about this, um, is that I can build it up so much that I'm already stressed about it before it's even happened, right? So I haven't even been let down yet, right? Because the thing hasn't happened. Maybe I'm anticipating it not happening like I want it to happen. And so I'm already feeling the negative emotions that go along with being disappointed. And I haven't even been disappointed yet, right? Like I'm preemptively getting upset about something that hasn't even happened. Isn't that ridiculous? Let me know if I'm not alone in that. If that's something any of you ever do, where you're just kind of expecting it to go wrong and you're just already upset about it. It happens. It happens. So what do we need to do about this, right? Let's move on to really the most important part about this. So, in order to uh, not have as much disappointment and resentment, that means we need to learn to let go of the expectations, right? To not be as attached, not hold on as tightly. And we've already outlined, and thank you for participating. We've already outlined some areas. Expectations can be okay; they can be warranted. But if we kind of zoom out in a broader sense, learning to let go of expectations is going to be to our benefit, really, right? Because again, it just comes back to how we feel. So if I'm expecting things to go a certain way and they don't, then I feel negative. But if I didn't have expectations, that doesn't change the outcome, right? So like if I use just a very simple story of going to the ice cream shop and they didn't have strawberry ice cream and that's what I was really looking forward to. If I didn't go in and build up this expectation, if I was just like, hey, I'm just going to go to the ice cream shop and see what they have and pick what flavor I might like of what they have, and I didn't have this strong expectation, I would never be let down, right? And I know that seems kind of like a silly example, but I feel like it applies across the board. So if we just don't have a strong attachment and holding on to expectations, then we're not going to be let down as much just by the nature of how it works, right? If I wasn't really invested in something going a certain way, then I could just let it be what it is, right? Just let it be what it is. And so if I allow it to be what it is, then I can enjoy it for what it is. I can be thankful and appreciate what it is, right? Whatever the situation might be. And maybe this sounds like it's oversimplifying it, but I think we can try it, right? Try it the next time you find yourself getting more upset, when you find that disappointment keeps building and these same kinds of things keep happening. Take a moment and think, what am I expecting here, right? What are my expectations? Is this something that I can let go of some, right? Maybe I don't need to hold on to it as tightly. And so as I learn to release this, as I learn to accept what is instead of what I would like it to be, then I can really just enjoy it for what it is, right? Now, obviously, there's going to be things that happen that are not enjoyable. But I think that's kind of where um, practicing thankfulness comes in. And this is an important thing to do in general, but I think especially in this area where we look for the things that we can be thankful for, even in the midst of a situation that is not ideal. Things are not going great, and we're not happy about it, right? Still pause to look for the things that you can be thankful for, right? And so I want you to follow these steps, right? There's 4 steps to follow. When you're experiencing disappointment, when you're kind of going through this, right, and you're feeling all these negative emotions, first stop, right? Pause and give yourself a moment to reflect, right? And I suggest, yeah, trying to find a quiet place to do this. Maybe not in the midst of the chaos of the situation, but when you're able to take a step back, right, and reflect. And the first thing to do is name it, right? What is the expectation I have in this situation that's creating this feeling for me, right? And I think just by naming it and being aware of it, that will be a step in the right direction. Because so often I think we just get upset and we didn't even realize we had the expectation that we did, right? We just find ourselves being disappointed and we don't even realize why. And so pausing to really reflect on that and name it is the first step. And then accepting it, right? It's not how I wanted it to be, but this is how it is. So now what? There's power in that, right? It's not how I would like it to be. It's not how I expected it to be, but this is how it is, right? Can't like it or not, this is how it is. So now what can I do with the situation, right? Step 3 is learning to be more flexible, right? This is where you can loosen your grip a little bit on the expectations. You can still have preferences. You can still like try to make some choices out of the options you have. Again, right? Going back to my silly example of the ice cream shop, that just came to the top of my head. I didn't plan that. Going back to the ice cream shop, they didn't have strawberry, so I'm just going to go with what they do have, right? I can make the best choice out of the options that are before me, right? So, yeah, they didn't have the thing that I expected, the thing that I really wanted, but I can choose out of what they do have, right? And so I can still find some enjoyment. I can still find some good things, even if it wasn't the thing that I wanted most, right? And so embracing flexibility, loosening that grip on expectations, and then practicing curiosity. I really like this one. This is an important one, and I think it's can be really pivotal for us. So when we have strong expectations for things, expectations I think can serve as like blinders, right? Where all we see is the thing that we want, right? We're laser focused on this expectation, this outcome. This is what I want to happen. And when it doesn't happen, it's just like all is lost. You know, we just act like, well, it's ruined, right? And in those moments, right, where when we if we're letting go of expectations and we're not so focused on it having to be this way, now we're suddenly open to other possibilities. We can be curious about other things that can happen, right? Things that we might not even have thought of that are now open to us because we weren't so focused on certain outcomes. And so, yeah, maybe I go to the ice cream shop and I wasn't so focused on there having to be strawberry and I'm just so upset that they don't have strawberry. And I go in with an open mind. I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to try this flavor over here. You know, maybe I'm going to try butter pecan, and I'd never had that before. And I try it, and it's amazing. And I love butter pecan now, and it's like this amazing experience of trying this really great ice cream that I never would have had if I had just been so focused on the strawberry. And they didn't have it, so it was everything was ruined, and I just threw away the whole experience. So be curious. Don't be so focused on the outcome that you want that you miss out on opportunities for other outcomes. And I was able to do this somewhat with that trip that I was talking about at the beginning. You know, we went to Louisville and I was starting to feel disappointed because we weren't doing as much. I wasn't flying my drone like I wanted to because of the different laws and stuff that they have in Louisville. And I was just starting to feel down. And thankfully, yeah, Kim talked to me a little bit about that, and I was able to reflect and try to shift a little bit, and then we were able to explore some different things. And I was curious about like trying some things that we hadn't thought of, and we got to have fun and do have some experiences that we wouldn't have had if I had just been so bent out of shape because things weren't going how I expected them to. So being curious really opens up new opportunities, and it protects our peace, right? That's kind of the end result. If we're not so tightly holding on to our expectations, then our peace is protected, right? We're not so upset when things don't happen the way we want them to. We start to accept the way they are, and that gives us a sense of peace instead of being filled with frustration and anxiety and resentment, all that. Instead, we get to hold peace and get to enjoy that in our life. And there's not much better than peace in your life, right? It's one of the things that's worth pursuing more of. And so, yeah, I highly recommend following those steps. And I'm going to have like a little outline guide, a handout for you, where you can kind of take a look at this and do a little self evaluation the next time you're dealing in a situation where you're really upset about something. You can go through this handout and try it out. So, what are the key takeaways here? What can you do with what we've talked about? Again, it goes back to those steps, right? Being able to name the expectation, right? Being able to um, accept things for how they are, being able to embrace flexibility, and then practicing curiosity. What else is available for you? Droxide says applying the everything happens for a reason mentality to these situations can also be a good tool to help deal with disappointment. Absolutely. And so that kind of brings up a good point um, that I do want to bring about because people believe different things, obviously, and for I know not everybody believes in God, but for those of you that do or believe in a creator or higher power, this idea of things happening for a reason, right? So allowing things to go a way that's not within your control, that's not within your power to control, is okay, especially if you trust in a higher power that is working things out for a reason. I know not everybody believes that, but for those of you that do, there's comfort in that as well, right? Being able to let go and trust in a higher power that is guiding things and everything's happening for a reason, right? All right. Well, thank you all so much. I'm looking at my notes real quick just to see. I wanted to mention too. I do these Tom Talk lives, and I'm hoping you're getting value from them. I'm going to put a poll out soon of just what other topics you'd be interested in hearing about. So I have a list of different stuff. I'm going to put a few ideas on there, and then if you have any additional ones, feel free to put that on there. Thank you all for joining me, Madroxide and Kim, for being part of the live stream this evening. I appreciate that. And those of you watching in the replay, do leave comments still. I'm able to read those afterwards and let me know what you think about this. Is this something that you can apply to your life? Are there areas where you've just been dealing with a lot of disappointment and are struggling with this? And then finally, I want to offer an invitation. So, as some of you might know, I'm a life coach, and so I work with individuals, helping them to figure out what they really want from life and also figuring out what is in the way of that. And so, if maybe this is something you're struggling with and you're wanting to learn how to move past this and learn how to kind of move into a life that is has more peace and more confidence and moving towards the goals that you really want, that's what I'm in the business of doing, right? That's what the coaching is all about. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'm going to offer you a gifted session where we can just explore that and see if that is something that would work for you. Thank you all again for joining me. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we will see you in the next one.